So this episode is brought to you by a conversation I was having with a friend of mine who's also a Dallas fan. There's always talk about JR's indiscretions and people who slept with over the years, his love of his life. My friend was like, what about Sue Ellen? I was like, yeah, Sue Ellen had some too. She has out there, she had some significant relationships, and we're going to talk about that. I actually did an episode of this show talking about what could have been between Gary and Sue Ellen. That's another story. You can watch the episode on JLJ Media or listen to it on any streaming platform. I think it's titled The Promise or something of Gary and Sue Ellen Ewing. But I'll mention it briefly in here. I thought it was a wasted opportunity. They should have, both alcoholics, should have brought them together. They didn't do the reboot. That's another story about the reboot, but listen to my stuff on that. But Sue Ellen has some significant relationships too. Other than JR. JR was the through line, the love of her life, the reaction to everything she did and does and do's. This is the Dallas Aftershow. I'm James Lott Jr. I'll say that part. Cliff Barnes was the first one that she cheated on JR with. And Cliff Barnes, she was with him twice over the course of the series. I always thought that was an interesting situation because Cliff was the nemesis of JR, for one. And he was a different type of guy. And he was someone who would have loved Sue Ellen deeply, I think. Or if they had written him as an evil character, like really evil, could have been somebody he used against JR. But I thought he was more like, what's my comparison? Like on Young and the Restless. Nikki and Victor, of course, if you watch the show, they love their lives. But Jack was a close contender, and they stayed friends, and they were very close. They're still close to this day. But she was married to Jack, and he helped raise her kids, and there was a big, and even though Jack and Victor were rivals, there was something they had in common. And I thought they should have played that up more. They did play it. I mean, she slept with him and had there was a paternity, who's your daddy test for John Ross, trying to be JR's, of course. She later had another miscarriage thing happen, or who's daddy later, another character. But I just thought, I wish I could have mined that a little more. Plus, with the crossover of Pam and Bobby, Sue Ellen and Cliff, it's been very interesting. Cliff, was never a match for JR. I think we all can agree with that in terms of how the way they wrote him back in the day. So that's why he walked all over, I guess, on some level. But if they made him a little stronger, who knows where that could have went? But that was one of her people. Dusty Farlow was a strong contender. Clayton's son, who had the accident, was supposed to be killed in the plane, came back, was supposed to be paralyzed, got used to his legs. But the rodeo circuit took him. But I like the relationship. It's another cowboy. Makes sense that she won't be, he was hotsy-totsy. Makes sense she would be into him. But that was a cool contender. He was a different kind of guy than JR and Cliff. I liked him. Nicholas Pierce, played by the Jack Scalea, who got killed at the end of an episode, end of a season. JR got into a tussle, pushed over a balcony. Sue Ellen shoots JR, and that whole thing. That was the whole thing very funny in the later seasons. And all of a sudden, there's cops and everything in my area. I have my own drama going on. All of a sudden, it's been quiet all day. I decided to film. Okay, I don't know if you guys can hear that or not. So that was another one. Peter Richards, Christopher Atkins, straight from the Blue Lagoon or whatever. Oh my goodness, younger man. Really, there is actually a helicopter over my house and cops. That's crazy. It was quiet this whole day. It really was. You can't win, right? I'm not doing this over, so we're just gonna push it through. It's drama for drama, right? Hope you can hear me. But they were together. He was a camp counselor for John Ross, younger man. Why not let Sue Ellen? JR been with a lot of younger women. Younger man should be with younger man. It was doomed. It was doomed from the start. Now I'm getting notification that a robbery at 67, right by my house. Okay. Very interesting. This is oops, something fell. Hold please. I just took a second to check on what's going on. There's a robbery happening near me, but I'm fine. So there's a helicopter going over me. So, oh well. But we're back. I know for you, it may look like anything. I just paused it and I'm starting again, but I went off for a little bit to check what's going on. I'm back. Okay, see, drama for drama. It's kind of crazy. Okay. So Peter Richards, JR set him up, then also sent him out of town, got him out of town. He was no match. A young boy, was no match. Don Lockwood, Ian McShane, who's now this huge star, right, of all these shows. Huge, great actor, huge star. Played a screenwriter who was writing the life of JR. It put Sue Ellen, when she left, when Linda Gray left the show, put her in a big position to release this movie that would ruin JR's reputation. He backed off, let her go. Later we hear she married him. That was the whole thing. But there's no mention of him when she came back for the reboot. But that would be interesting if she stayed on the show and if he had the dynamic there would be interesting. And in the reboot, Gary was flirted with, but Rylan Harris, when she was running for office, these things were going on, and Rylan was Annie's ex. That could have been an interesting storyline. That show, there's so much about that show I did not like. It's not one of those things. It's wasted opportunities. Two characters that could have been very interesting together. But he was trying to screw her over, and Annie helped her. They worked together to get back at him, and so it didn't really work out. So she had her own men in her life that were very significant to her. So I wanted to make sure, like I said, out of this conversation I had with a friend, Sue Ellen completely had other people in her life other than J.R. Ewing. But J.R. Ewing was the love of her life, as she stated, and I believe that also. I feel like J.R. was her one and only. But there were other contenders that could have challenged that. I could have challenged that. The Dallas After Show is on all streaming services, and it's also on YouTube under under JLJ Media. And thank you to all the Dallas groups that let me share this in there, because I love you guys. I love reading what you have to say. I love all your comments. Please keep commenting and talk about how you feel about what I'm talking about. If I missed anyone, we're just talking about the shows on for 13 years originally and then 3 years in the reboot. If I missed anyone, please let me know and I'll make an addendum. Bye. Please take care of yourselves. And Dallas is the best show.